Hey class, welcome back. This week we're going to focus on appraisal and motivation. Just a couple quick announcements. For next week, remember that we have no discussions. I just want you to focus on your exam. I know the last 2 weeks are kind of hectic, especially with deliverable 1 and then your exam, but keep in mind that next week is just solely to focus on your exam, and hopefully you can have some time to enjoy time with family and friends to celebrate the 4th of July. And my goal is by the end of this week to get you feedback and grades for deliverable 1. Again, I'll try to do that efficiently and effectively, but I do want to spend some time reading all of your papers. So if you have questions, feel free to contact me. The other thing too for this week's discussions, I want you to think about how performance-based pay and what you did for deliverable 1 really ties into what we're doing this week in terms of looking at performance appraisal. So with that said, some questions to get us going for the week. First and foremost is deciphering performance appraisal, and then the second question too is performance appraisal process assessment. So if you look at the laundry list of options to performance appraisal, think about how this links back to the merit system that you did for deliverable 1. So there's a variety of methods to appraising employees in the public sector, which are listed on page 194 in Battaglio. 4 of these, the traditional method, so you can do a narrative assessment. Second is trait-based method. So this is often used in the private sector with the Myers-Briggs test. Third option is behavior-based models or methods, also known as BARS, which you give them unit standards or a behaviorally anchored rating scale. And then the fourth would be outcome-based methods. And so how can you link an employee's performance to the agency's goals or mission statement? So when selecting a plan out of these 4 or out of the options that we're reading about for this week, you have to weigh the costs and benefits of each. The idea is that performance appraisal should include an improvement plan for employees. So what happens if someone fails to meet expectations? The idea is that you're going to say, hey, these are some things that you need to improve on, and give them a plan to do so. There's been some concerns surrounding those 4, so you do have some organizations moving to alternative appraisal methods. One is the 360-degree performance appraisal, and so you have ratings from the employee, supervisors, peers, and even customers or clients, and so everyone's involved in this. And then second is having an assessment center where an employee in a variety of work-life simulations, their performance can be observed. So obviously those alternatives can be costly, but those are some things that some organizations are moving towards. If you look at all of these collectively, you have to be cognizant of a couple of things. So kind of the big concerns. So personal bias and stereotyping. If there's a recent event and you're using that to carry over to evaluate someone, and then also first impressions. So think about how all of those impacts how you rate everyone within an organization. A couple other things to consider is looking at the case study, so the LAPD case. How does that compare, or what of the laundry list of options, what do you think should have been used and what was used? So that would be a good way to look at it in terms of writing your commentary for this week. I do want to shift our focus to public sector motivation. And so what is it and why should we care? And so if you haven't taken organizational theory yet, just a couple lessons to org theorists, specifically Maslow, the Hawthorne studies, and why we should pay attention to people. And so Maslow talks about the hierarchy of needs. The Hawthorne study talks about the Hawthorne effect in terms of manipulating the work setting. And so if you give people a little bit more light, or if you give them additional breaks, and how that motivates individuals to work. This also links to the discussion or readings between Lois Weiss and Perry. So Wise uses criteria in terms of norm-based, effective, and rational. And so the types of motivations or why people are motivated to work in an organization. But then Perry talks about how you can detect those that actually have a public service motivation to work for the public sector. And he talks about attraction to policy, self-sacrifice, commitment to public interest, and compassion. So this long list is all from page 222 in Pataglio. But the bottom line is, how you answer these questions gauges your determinants in having motivation to work for the public sector. So one of the last big questions too is, does the public sector have a morale crisis, right? And so how can you leverage public sector motivation? There's surveys of federal employees on how unhappy or happy individuals are. And so how can you address this through recruitment? And, designing a job and workplace incentives. So, oftentimes we're downplaying the benefits and wages. But again, it goes back to agency mission, the organizational climate. And so Charles Goodsell wrote a collection or a book on mission mystique and how a mission and agency culture can really drive and help create an environment in which people are motivated to come to work. So lastly, again, coming back to this question, can you leverage public sector motivation within public agencies? Do you think this is a fallacy or accuracy? And some things to get you started. And I look forward to our discussions this week. Thank you.